Welcome to Talking Out Your Glass. I'm Shawn Wagoner. Stephen Dee Edwards is particularly interested in using glass to capture a moment in time and considers its color, optical, and fluid qualities ideal for communicating impressions of life. Born in Santa Monica, California in 1954, he was a pre-med student in college where he learned how to do in-depth research. He then switched to ceramics, but quickly recognized the infinite possibilities of hot glass after seeing it for the first time. Edwards earned a BA from San Jose State University in 1978 and an MFA from Illinois State University in 1980. He married his wife Pat, and the two moved to Penland School in North Carolina to participate in the school's Artist-in-Residence program. In 1982, they moved to Green Mountain, North Carolina, where the artist built his first private glass studio and raised 2 children with Pat. Selling his first piece to the Corning Museum of Glass and selling out his first solo exhibition at Heller Gallery in New York City were career-defining moments. In 1988, Edwards began teaching at Alfred University, where he co-founded the National Casting Center. He taught at Alfred for 22 years, built one of the largest educational hot glass programs in the world, and traveled the globe teaching workshops, attending conferences, and symposiums on glass art. Upon retiring from teaching in 2010, he worked full-time in his studio in Alfred Station, New York. 4 years after retiring from full-time teaching, Edwards moved to the Ojai Valley in Southern California. Having received 2 National Endowment for the Arts grants, Edwards' work can be found in over 30 public collections worldwide, including the National Gallery of Art at the Smithsonian Institution, Washington, D.C., the Hokkaido Museum of Modern Art, Japan, the Frankfurt Museum of Art, Germany, and the Corning Museum of Glass, New York. With a long exhibition history in galleries internationally, Edwards was also president of the Glass Art Society. 5 years ago, Edwards was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, another chapter in his story of resilience. Turning to music as a new way to express creatively, he has mastered a couple of acoustic instruments and loves playing music with others. Says Edwards, "My father had Parkinson's. What does the future hold for me? I struggled for 6 months trying to get a grip on my diagnosis. I was having problems with balance, brain fog, and tremors. I went to a neurological boxing program at a local gym. I loved it. I met other Parkinson's patients there and got out my frustrations. I decided to fight Parkinson's and not give in to it. It has been the fight of my life. The doctor said I would be dead in 3 years. That was 5 years ago, and I am still here. You can't stop Parkinson's, but you can slow down the progression with exercise. I am still working in my studio and playing bluegrass music with friends." Many thanks to the sponsors of this episode of Talking Out Your Glass: His Glassworks Incorporated, Bullseye Glass Company, the Art Alliance for Contemporary Glass, East Bay Color, Wet Dog Glass, Resist, Paragon Kilns, and the New York State College of Ceramics at Alfred University. For more information on our sponsors, visit talkingoutyourglass.com. Click on Episodes Season 11 and Stephen Dee Edwards. A sincere thank you and welcome to our new Patreon, Jimbo of JHC Wood and Glass, and also to James Stockman for his one-time donation. Thank you so much. Stephen Dee Edwards, thank you so much for joining me on Talking Out Your Glass podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to have you on. I've been wanting to interview you for so long, so I'm looking forward to this conversation. Well, talk a bit about California, where you're from, and its impact on your aesthetic and your approach to glass.
Yeah, so I'm a third-generation Californian. I grew up in Los Angeles and had just this crazy childhood where I was living with an abusive alcoholic and got sent to a military academy for school. And we both rebelled at the school, and I personally rebelled and went to the beach. The school was an ROTC school. It was during the Vietnam War years. I'm bad on dates, but 1970 is when this happened. So it was a full-blown military academy boarding school really strange. And the Vietnam War was going on, and every year we had a for real general from the Army come and inspect the troops. That was us. And then we'd earn our blue star, which meant we were ROTC certified. And we were all going to go into the service as non-commissioned lieutenants. So the war was raging, the campus was raging, and we decided to, this is my junior year in high school, we decided with the seniors to overthrow the military at the school. And so that year, when the general came to inspect the troops, we had naked people, women in ranks. Everybody was drunk. We'd failed miserably. And they got rid of the military and turned it into an intellectual radical school, which was like amazing transformation to see. So I grew up with that, and I needed to get out of there. My home wasn't safe where I grew up. The military academy was just weird, although it got better. And so I went to the beach, and started surfing when I was 6 years old. I rowed for two professional teams and surfed all over the world. And that has informed my work to this day. The colors I've seen, the aquatic imageries filtered through light and reflective water, color combinations, dry, wet combinations. The natural world still just blows me away. It's the best art out there.
In 1976, you were a pre-med student in California. Describe the kind of pressure you were under that led to some very intense events and changes in your life.
So obviously my parents thought that I had gone astray a long time before that. And they took me on a college tour. And we went to University of Santa Clara, and there's all these priests walking around. And I said, what's with that? And they go, oh, it's nothing, don't worry about it. So I ended up going there, and well, they sent me there. And the first day you had to pick your major. And I went down the list, and like the first one was like art. And I went, no, that's accounting, no, business, no. Kept going down the list, and I got to biology before business, obviously. And I loved my biology teacher in my school. We had outstanding faculty, and this guy was the existential purple man. Everything was purple for him, and he taught biology, and I loved him and the way he got me engaged in the subject and the miracles that the human body is. So I got sent to University of Santa Clara, picked biology, enrolled in my first classes there. Very intense. My first quarter in college, as is on the quarter system. I had genetics, organic chemistry, physics, and one more that I can't remember now. And in your whole 4 years, you only got one elective. And you were told that day one that if you got one B, you wouldn't, if you got more than one B, you'd never get into a California medical school. And I thought, wow, this is intense. So all of a sudden, I'm on the fast track to being a doctor, which my parents loved, and I loved the subject. But I was in lecture halls with 300 people, and the professor was in some other lecture hall with 300 more people. You never got to meet him. And every single day of the week, you had a major exam coming up in one of these tough subjects, and you knew if you got a B, you were screwed. So it was tremendous pressure. People sabotaging each other's laboratory work, super cutthroat, and the amount of information they're trying to jam down your system in such a short period of time. I don't know how you could recall that stuff, but you had to take notes during class and then write summaries of your notes after class and between class, be studying for your next class. And I had one buddy there at the university that we kind of complained about the situation and questioning whether we really wanted to do it. During my third year there, he committed suicide. And I felt like I was just like one step behind him, and I just kind of rolled up in a ball and shook for about a year. I dropped down to, I took time off, and then I dropped down to junior college, Monterey Peninsula College in Monterey, California, which was this super low key, super fun school. And I had one elective coming to me, and I took ceramics with Joe Hysong was his name. It's a great guy. Everybody that worked with him loved him. And he taught us ceramics. He had a great history in ceramics. And at the end of the year, he would set up a small glass blowing furnace made out of soft brick that only lasted a week, and threw big chunks of soft brick in the glass, melding 475 marbles. And I watched him just mesmerized in the same way I was mesmerized the first time I saw somebody throwing a pot. It just looked like magic, defying gravity and the heat and the motion and the dance. It just reminded me so much of being a surfer, which I miss so much. And at the end of the week, the tank was half empty, and he handed me a blowpipe and he says, finish it off, and walked away and just left me with it by myself. And so I finished out the tank, and I went to him and I said, Joe, where can I go study glass? And he said, just up the road, San Jose State with Dr. Bob Fritz, which is one of our founding members, as you know. And so then I went up to San Jose State and enrolled in their program. By the time I rolled in there, I'd done all my academics. So all I had left was art classes. So we went to San Jose State, $96 for full load of classes, $96 a semester, and just an outstanding school. I stayed with David Middlebrook there, who's like this wild man ceramics guy. Now does a lot of, mostly bronze casting. But they had tremendous faculty and great facility. And Dr. Bob Fritz was just the kind of guy, he was just a character. And he wanted you to develop on your own. And he did everything he could in his power to keep you from making functional work. He was a sculptor with glass. He worked with Erwin Eich in the early years, worked in the dip and blow school of glass blowing, made big things, and had his own slot. And we all marveled at him. And he'd come in the shop, and somebody'd be working, and they'd get their bubble like perfectly on center, and he'd walk up with the shears and cut it, put a big cut in it. He said, machines can do that kind of stuff. We're humans. Let's be free with the materials. So I got that from Dr. Bob.
We'll return to Stephen Dee Edwards in just a moment. This episode of Talking Out Your Glass is sponsored by His Glassworks Incorporated, diamond tools and glass cold working supplies. Suppliers of diamond plated tools and accessories, including diamond laps, wheels, belts, and adhesives. Expert advice available at hisglassworks.com. This episode is sponsored by Bullseye Glass Company, a leader in the development of an enormous palette of tested compatible colored glass for stained glass, kiln casting, fusing, torch working, and mosaics. Visit bullseyeglass.com to locate a dealer or Bullseye Resource Center near you. This episode of Talking Out Your Glass is sponsored by the Art Alliance for Contemporary Glass. AACG is a leading resource for glass collectors, artists, gallerists, museum personnel, educators, and all other things related to glass art. Its mission is to further the development and appreciation of art made from glass. It also provides a place for glass community to have a robust conversation around glass art through its weekly virtual programs and provides grants and scholarships. Membership gives glass lovers access to many members-only benefits. For more information and to become a member of AACG, go to aacgglass.org. And now, we return to Stephen Dee Edwards. Well, after receiving a Master of Fine Arts degree at Illinois State University, you received an Artist in Residence position at Penland in North Carolina. Talk about what you were focused on there.
One more Dr. Bob story. He went
Yes.
out like we all want to go out. He died on the dance floor with an
Wow.
18-year-old girl at the Los Angeles Gas Conference with his wife sitting there watching. He had a big smile on his face and he dropped dead. What a way to go.
Yes.
Way
Well,
to go.
we can all only hope.
Was always his biggest supporter. She carried on his work and exhibiting his work after he passed away, which is something that us older folks have to consider. What's going to happen with all this stuff?
After receiving a Master of Fine Arts at Illinois State University, you received an artist in residence position at Penland School in North Carolina. What were you focused on at that time?
Uh, I did my graduate work at Illinois State with Joel Philip Myers. Taught me all about hard work and integrity. I mean, those were his two really strong points. He was a great man, and he was right there from the beginning. Even before the beginning, he was working at Blanco Glass Factory, and he went to Alfred. So then, after I got my MFA with Joel, the way they did it there was you sat outside the gallery, and your six professors went in there and talked about what they're going to have for lunch or whatever it was they talked about. And then Joel came out and he shook my hand and he says, "Congratulations, you've earned your Master of Fine Arts degree." And I said, "Ah, thanks, Joel. That's so great. I really appreciate, what you've done for me, etc." And he says, "Well, what are you going to do next?" And I said, "Well, I got an artist in residence job down at Penland School in North Carolina, and I'm going to take a shot at making a living making glass sculpture." And he said, "Good luck." He says, "You got to know that the only person doing that right now is Harvey Littleton. It was before Dale." And I said, and I just kind of that sat in the back of my head, and I just tried to keep it back there and just keep moving forward and studying sculpture. So I developed a series of work in grad school with Joel, with his guidance, encouraging students to look within for their inspiration. I was in Normal, Illinois, middle of nowhere, flat, cold, windy, and thinking about California. And I went to the Shed Aquarium in Chicago and saw the sea life there. And I thought, wow, that's it. That's what's unique to me. Everybody has a unique story, and that was really unique to my story, all those years surfing and being around that stuff. I started to concentrate on that, and get myself in the zone. The heat of the glory hole and the roar of the furnace reminded me of feeling the sun in my face and hearing the roar of the waves as as I moved through them. And I just started working spontaneously with the glass, not looking to any other glass artist or artists in general, just looking at sea life and trying to pull some of those patterns out and trying to just stay free and develop this two-way dialogue with your work. It's easy to have a one-way dialogue where you're just telling your work, what you want it to be. I was looking for this two-way dialogue where the work would speak back to me and say, "No, not like that, like this." I'd see so many demos over the years, and I remember seeing this one where this guy picked up a Grawl blank, too cold, and when he went to go reheat it in the glory hole, it blew up. And I looked at it and I thought, God, that's gorgeous, what it came out. But he couldn't accept it and he threw it away. And I thought you got to be a little bit more observant than that. So I was making the Sea Form series, which was a combination between the sea life, and then I got to bring my mother in, who raised orchids. So I grew up around orchids my whole life. And so I wanted to do this kind of jazz fusion between sea life and plant life, not wanting to either make a jellyfish or an orchid, but make abstractions, the ideas of color and form to make up my own imaginary world, I suppose. And got out of school and had a artist in residence gig set up at Penland School when I graduated. And then I was there and I went to my work table one day and there was a business card on it. And it was from Tom Buechner, who was this president of Corning Glass Works. And it just had a little handwritten note that said, "Please find me. I'm here." Told me where he was going to be. I went and I found him, and he came back to my studio, and he says, "I don't mean to embarrass you." He says, but would you consider selling one of your pieces to the Corning Museum for its permanent collection?" Now, a little background. I never sold anything in my life. I never even tried to. That wasn't part of the equation for me. I was just on this mystic journey. I was on this path, just enjoying the ride. And Tom did a smart thing. I said, "Which piece?" He says, "You pick it. You're the artist." So that was great.
So
And
which piece did you pick?
well, it was in the images that I sent you. It was a long, low C form with texture on the outside and solid color on the inside. Hard to explain what it was, but it was a really great piece. I'm glad that it found a good home there. And so I sent them the piece, and then within like 12 hours, I was getting phone calls from Doug Heller and all the gallery owners. Said, "Hey, we heard you just sold a piece to the museum. Would you be interested in having a solo show at Heller Gallery?" So this is like a Schwab's drugstore thing, you know. I'm just doodling along, and then Corny gets one of my pieces, and then Doug Heller calls me up when his gallery was on Madison Avenue. And I had my first solo exhibition on Madison Avenue with Doug Heller.
Yeah, tell the story of that exhibition. That's such a great story of what happened.
So obviously I was scared to death. You know, it was like one of those galleries where you had to ring the bell to get in. And so I had a friend of mine that lived downtown, Bob DeGrunier, who's still around and making glass. We were in grad school together. And me and Bob went out to some place, and I just remember we ate London broil steaks and drank Bloody Marys until we both got sloshed. And I was afraid to go to the opening. It was one of those openings that was like 8 hours long, and they wanted you to be there at 11 o'clock, say. Well, I didn't show up till like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We drove uptown in a cab, smoked a joint. My friend Bob, he just kind of pushes me out of the cab and he says, "There you go." And I kind of stumble up to the gallery and ring the doorbell. And I see Doug Heller coming running up the stairs. And I'm thinking, "Oh, shit, you know, I'm in for it now. I blew it this time." He comes up and he opens the door and he says, "You missed it." And I said, "I missed what?" He said, "It's sold out." He said, "It's sold out in 2 hours." So that was pretty amazing. And then, you know, I was down in North Carolina at the time, and same thing. By the time I drove home from New York to North Carolina, I was getting calls from now all over the world wanting to have exhibitions of my work because, let's face it, galleries run on sales. And if you have a sellout show, which we used to in the old days, everybody knows about it. And so that just launched me on an incredible quest. And being at Penland, I was exposed to Harvey Littleton, who was 15 minutes away from my studio. John Littleton, one of his sons, became my best friend. We're still in contact. Harvey brought in artists from all over the world to work in his studio. Raul Goldoni, Seabram Valkema. I'm sorry, but the list just goes on and on and on. So, including Dale. And I got exposed to all those people. Harvey had a gallery at his place, and he made a point of showing young area artists' work along next to his. You know, he gave us a leg up. And so all the collectors, and there were a lot of them in those days, would come to see Harvey and maybe end up walking out with one of our pieces or coming and visiting us in our studio. So it's just during an incredible time of exploration and excitement, it just added to it. I was just at the right place at the right time.
Which was the early 1980s, right? You sold your piece to Corning in 1980, and then your show at Heller was shortly after that. Is that right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
correct. Yeah.
The golden years of glass,
Well,
really.
when I
They
was
were.
showing it at, this is another thing I want to say about Joel Myers was when I graduated, he set up three two-person exhibitions at the best galleries in the country with me and him. He'd never done that before or since. And it was at Heller Gallery, Habitat Gallery, and the gallery that's gone now that was in Baltimore, and I can't remember the name. It was the Bernstein
Oh,
Gallery.
yeah.
Yeah, the Bernstein Gallery. Those were nice people. So I got my, I got taken along to the big party. It was
Yeah.
very cool and so generous of Joel.
Talk a little bit about your two National Endowment for the Arts grants. How did you utilize those and when did you receive those?
Oh, the good old days. Everybody's going to say that. Even the kids now are going to refer to right now as the good old days. The good old days, the National Endowment for the Arts was giving individual artist grants at two levels. One, if I remember correctly, was $15,000 uh, unrestricted funds for one level, and then I think that it was a $7,000 grant for other people. And it was just, like 20 slides, your name and address. It was no BS and tremendous honor to get one of those grants. And I think I was at the right place at the right time. And Doug Hiller told me when he first saw my work that he said it looked like it landed from outer space. He says he'd never seen anything like it. And I said, that's great. And he says, well, no, actually, it's not. But the first time I approached Doug was while I was still in grad school. And I thought, okay, New York City, this is where it all happens. And I went and made an appointment to see Doug. He had me sweep up after a Chihuly opening that happened the night before down in the lower floor of his gallery. And he just kind of left me up down there and forgot about me. And I came and got him. And he took one of Dale's pieces off a pedestal. I had these boxes of glass. He says, okay, you got 10 minutes, go. And so I'm like, putting pieces up on the pedestal and doing my shuck and jive and stuff. And that's what the comment he made was that he'd never seen any work like it. It didn't have any track record, and I had to understand his overhead, and he told me about all that. And I understood it. It's very expensive for him to carry people. But then he was the first person that called when the Corn Museum bought one of my pieces, which gave me legitimacy. And when I had my show with him, he bought one of my pieces immediately for himself and then told me to double my prices.
Hmm.
So you start to learn about the business of glass, sooner or
Yes.
later, no matter how much you try and avoid it, it is a business and it's a tricky one.
So what did you do with your National Endowment for the Arts grants?
Yep. So I got my first one when I was just got my arts in residency at Penland School, and there what they did was they just gave you a space. You had to build all your own equipment, and you had a file in the office with your name on it. And what that was about was that Penland had charge accounts all over town, including the lumber yard, the propane company, all that. And the school would pay your bills for you. And then on an honor system, you paid them back. So, and all the residents did pay them back. So the school was a tremendous thing for me. So my first NEA grant, I got the small ones because I wasn't old enough for anything else. The $7,000 one, I think, I used to build my first studio, which was at Penland School. And Rob Levin's he was the resident before me. And the way I got the residency, here's an old day story. I was Rob's TA in a class at Penland, and Rob just mentioned to me off the cuff that he was going to he was a resident then, and he was going to leave his residency and set up a studio in Burnsville. And I said, well, who's going to be the next resident? He says, you want to do it? I said, yeah, sure. He said, go talk to Bill Brown, tell him I said it was okay. And then That's how I got that. Same thing, right place at the right time. So my first grant went to building my studio at Penland School at the residency barns there. My second grant went to build my second studio, which was in Green Mountain, North Carolina, which no longer exists. It was wiped off the map in the floods. But my second grant built my second studio. And those were the days where for $7,000, you could build a whole studio.
We'll return to Stephen Dee Edwards in just a moment. This episode of Talking Out Your Glass is sponsored by East Bay Color, your source for great casting glass choices. East Bay Color is proud to stock Gaffer Colors, Preciosa, and Banis glass from the Czech Republic. Gaffer glass, 45% lead crystal bricks in 20-plus color. Preciosa billets in 15% and 48% lead crystal, half-round billets. Banis blocks, lead-free in nearly 100 colors, approximately 2.5 kilos each. Coming soon, 24% lead discs in 14 colors from Zybo Glass in China. Please contact East Bay Color at 800-322-6567 or visit eastbaycolor.com. Wet Dog Glass is proud to be a sponsor of this episode of Talking Out Your Glass. In business since 1996, Wet Dog Glass delivers unsurpassed value to glass studios like Corning Museum of Glass and others around the globe. Offerings include turnkey hot glass studio equipment, studio planning consultation, and technical support. Wet Dog Glass, your studio's best friend. For more information, visit wdg-us.com. This episode is sponsored by Resist. Resist provides businesses and artists with advanced sand carving equipment and sand carving films. The company also offers guidance and support through video tutorials, hands-on workshops, and online help as you expand your business. With over 40 years of experience, Resist has been a direct manufacturer of laserable films, photoresist films, custom mask stencils, and equipment, serving the sand carving industry. For more information, visit resist.com. And now, back to Stephen Dee Edwards. Well, you received a sculpture professorship at Alfred University of New York State, where you stayed for 22 years. How would you describe your program there?
Okay, let me tell you how I got there, and then I'll describe that. So I had my studio in Green Mountain. Things were going fine. I'd had a sellout exhibition at Heller Gallery. The next year, I had another sellout exhibition at Heller Gallery, and the year after that, I had a sellout exhibition at the gallery. Then the next year, I sold nothing. And I asked Doug, I said, what happened? And he says, well, everybody's got a couple of your pieces. They're on to the next person. So the business side of running a glass studio reared its ugly head, with the propane bills, and I was hiring help, and we were running out of money fast. And my wife's crying at the kitchen table with a stack of bills. How are we going to pay these, Steve? Couldn't you just make some paperweights or something? I said, no, I can't do that. So then, just right then, Fred Sheeta, who was a neon professor at Alfred, came in and gave a lecture at Penland and handed me a flyer for a job at Alfred University. And I threw it away, but I threw it in the trash can in the bathroom. And whenever I'd sit on the can, I'd fish it out and look at it. And I kept reading it and going, maybe I should check this out. We were just having our first kid, Heidi, was born down in North Carolina, and the business was kind of sputtering, and I was trying to, things change when you have kids, looking towards the future and all that. And I fished out the job description. I called them up and asked them about the job. And I said, you're going to pay me how much? How many days a week? 3 days a week, a month and a half off for Christmas, 3 months off for summertime. You're getting paid the whole time. You work 3 consecutive days a week so that you can do your artwork. At Alfred, it was an art school, so our deans were always artists, usually painters, a couple of photographers in there. And they were dedicated to us being in our studios. So we were evaluated by our professional activity outside the university. That was our way of publishing. And so they told me how much I had to work and how much I was going to get paid. And I thought, geez, I'd be crazy not to check this out. I got a family coming up, and I loved being in schools. School was like the most fun place ever because it was completely separate from reality. It was its own thing. And so um, I decided to go ahead and apply, and and I got interviewed. Some real heavyweight players were in there, and they didn't offer me the job. They offered it to somebody else. That somebody else, I won't tell the story, but shot themselves in the foot, and they dropped down to me. So I was like the second pick. I went in there, and they told me that they'd give me a blank check if I would build this program into the biggest, best program in the world. And because I was unique at the university in that I didn't come out of academia. I came out of a studio. So I was equipped to do that. And the school bankrolled me. The state of New York gave me more than $12 million to build a humongous facility. We went from having two students in the program when I arrived to having 80 full-time students using the facility. So that was just a kick-ass experience. And even doing all that, I had time and was required to do my own work.
So, what were some of the high points at Alfred?
My students, they
Hmm.
were the high points. I can remember every single one of them. I remember them in lumps because they traveled through the school as a lump and they were lumps as seniors. And I know who was a graduate student when those guys were seniors. Seeing your students' accomplishments, it's like your kids. You know, that's the greatest thing for a teacher to have a student take off and do well in the field. I don't take any credit for my students. I gave them a place to work. You know, they did the rest. But I built an empire down there that was unbelievable. And we had a 7,000 square foot facility, separate casting facility that had a 1,500 pound tank, a 3,000 pound continuous melt tank furnace. And I built all this stuff myself. It was 10 years until I was able to get a technician to do some of the work for me. But that's who I was. That's why they hired me to go there. I think one of the most exceptional things for me at Alfred was my engineering colleagues. I taught at the New York State College of Ceramics State School at Alfred University private school. So we were a state unit dumped into a private university. So we got two funding sources that would change off and balance each other out. And my college, the New York State College of Ceramics, was half art and half engineering. World-class art program, world-class engineering program. One out of three engineers in the world that work with ceramics or glass went to Alfred. So the level of faculty there and research was just astounding. The very first faculty meeting I went to, one of my colleagues, was a sculpture colleague that was also sculpture faculty, which is also unique to Alfred, to any of the other programs. Is usually, you're part of a ceramics program or something, but I was part of sculpture faculty. One of my colleagues stood up and said, "We got this great new guy, but he could use a little bit more money to get started." Uh, Dr. David Pye was one of the world leading glass researchers, stood up and said, "Send him to my office." And I went to his office, and he just asked me, "How much do you need?" And I said, "Well, the $10,000 would be great. You know, I could buy controllers." People were turning down the ovens by hand, 24 hours a day, 2 degrees at a time. And I'm like, oh my God, the program was a wreck when I got there. Dr. Pai helped me out, and I became friends and colleagues with him and his buddies up in engineering. We co-taught classes together. We established an art and engineering dual degree. They were just fantastic to me.
So, when and why did you begin casting?
I've been blowing glass for 20 years, making weird stuff. And like everybody else, stuff got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I remember I was blowing a human-sized leg on top of a sphere that was the world. And I picked up the sphere, slammed it down on the yoke, and the yoke flipped over. And the blowpipe caught me across the chest and burned a big line across my chest. And I said, okay, that's it. I'm not doing this anymore. And also, I didn't have the time. I wanted the students to have the time. Most faculty, they'll take like big chunks of time for themselves so they can work. I didn't want to do that. And you need to blow glass all the time if you're going to keep up with your skills. So casting was just starting to happen. I was friends with Howard Venturi. I got a lot of stuff from him and John Lewis. And I separated. We used to do casting, just loose sand casting in with our glass blowing program. I got another faculty hired there, which freed me up to take over a huge space and build a dedicated casting facility there. Humongous. So I could do my own work, and also the students benefited from it, and they all were able to do large casting all of a sudden.
So, where do you think glass education is today? How has it evolved?
Well, that's a tough one to answer because I'm out of touch. I mean, I retired, I don't know, 15 years ago, something like that. And I haven't kept up with it, gone to the symposiums. They're having education symposiums now. I know it's in the hands of new people that obviously are going to have new ideas and want to do different stuff. As the years roll on, one of the big tricks is to roll with the punches, and not resist that. So, like I remember when I was at I was president of the Glass Art Society, and there was a student exhibition, and two senior faculty members slammed me up against the wall and said, what's the matter with the kids these days? Blah, blah, blah. The work was blah, 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 blah. And I said, can you remember the work that you made when you were their age? I said, this is light years past that. Light years, leave me alone. So even though you may not like what's happening, I mean, like Pilchuck's making a turn. I think all the schools are. The older faculty now have all retired. Joe Myers, Bill Carlson, Dan Daly. The list goes on and on. They were the founding members of the community and ran those programs a certain way. But now the generation that's coming in, they don't have any of that experience. They just have a new way of looking at things and run the programs the way they want to run them. I don't keep track of even the program at Alfred. They hired Angus Powers to take my place there. Angus was one of my undergraduate students. And then he went to grad school with John Clark at Temple and came back and taught at Alfred. And I don't even, maybe I'll call him once a year and we'll talk about our family. But I've gone. It's a hard thing to walk away from because it's so sweet, your big teaching job. And it's tough to walk away, but a lot of things are tough to walk away from. You just got to do it.
We'll return to Stephen Dee Edwards in just a moment. This episode is brought to you by Paragon Kilns, the trusted leaders in reliable, high-durability kilns with cutting-edge technology for glass artists worldwide. Whether you're fusing, slumping, glazing, enameling, lamp working, or casting, Paragon delivers unmatched precision and quality. Visit ParagonKilns.com to explore their selection and take advantage of 10% off with free shipping on your new kiln. Just ask Stephen Dee Edwards. He trusts Paragon for his art. This episode of Talking Out Your Glass is sponsored by the New York State College of Ceramics at Alfred University. Glass has been used for thousands of years as both a medium for artistic expression and a critical high-technology material in the modern world. The New York State College of Ceramics at Alfred University uniquely bridges glass art and glass science. Glass artists deepen their understanding of material behavior through advanced techniques, while engineering students explore the complex science of glass, from AI-driven modeling of new compositions to energy-efficient manufacturing methods for industry. For more information, visit www.alfred.edu/NYSCC/. There are many free and easy ways you can help and support Talking Out Your Glass podcast. Please subscribe to our new YouTube channel and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. To become a Patreon co-producer of the show, visit patreon.com/Talking Out Your Glass, where you can get extra episodes for as little as $5 a month while supporting the continued documentation of glass and glass artists. Now back to Stephen Dee Edwards. In terms of your personal work, what are some of your career highlights in terms of pieces?
I've been really lucky over the years to get my pieces put into museums. That's one of the most rewarding things for me. It works in over 30 museums all over the world, including the Smithsonian. And those are the things that I'm probably the most proud of. And those pieces, in the early days, museums were buying work, but now mostly it's people donating their collection. So the whole secondary market thing has come up, which didn't exist before. People's parents die and they're left with this huge glass collection. They don't know what to do with it. So that's all rolled around.
Yeah. Well, after retiring from your position at Alfred, you and your wife, Pat, moved back to Southern California. Describe your studio and life in Ojai Valley.
So I've been at the university for 22 years or so. And when you're in any job for that long, after that amount of time, the job changes. You don't even recognize it anymore. When I first went to Alfred, I mean, it was wide open, naked parties with students, keggers in school. The drinking age was 18 at Alfred, and no safety or health requirements, and all that's bad, I suppose, but fun. It was fun riding in your dad's pickup truck, in the back. And by the time I left, I mean, we had to go through forklift training, ladder training, confined space training. You had to have 3 people before you could go down in the hole, and had to have a safety harness. And lo and behold, what happens at all the schools when that safety stuff creeps in is that your main helpers, which are the physical plant guys, the plumbers, the electricians, they don't work for you so hard anymore once they have to do that. Before they'd just jump in the hole. Now they'd go, I don't know, I don't think I can do that, And so the job changed a lot. I'd started to run up against the administration at my school. The administration changed regularly. Every average life expectancy of a dean of the art school was only 5 years. So I saw 5 to 7 years of deans. We had co-deans. We had a 3-dean soup one time. In the old days, the deans left you alone and said, hey, you know best. Run your program. Go wild, And then all the health and safety stuff came in, and the dean started looking more closely at what was going on. They found out that we had wild parties in the glass studio and all that kind of stuff. I got a lot of great stories, but the bottom line was the job wasn't as fun as it used to be. Then came the golden parachute. The golden parachute was an urban legend as far as I was concerned. I'd heard about it at the university, but it never happened. The golden parachute is when the state or somebody comes in and gives you a big pile of money and says, leave, And so finally, the golden parachute arrived. The state of New York was in financial trouble, and they wanted to lop off all the top earners. So they offered the full professors a bailout plan where they give you a certain amount of money and you agreed to leave. So you didn't have to pay your salary anymore. And I was so excited, I went to all my colleagues. I said, let's do it. Let's all of us, the whole top tier, let's just leave and let the young people do it. And I was the only one that took the bailout. Other teachers hadn't had the experience of having a private studio before. So they were scared to death of the real world. I'd been there, it's fine, no problem. And so then I took the bailout. I was advised not to do anything radical when you retire for about 5 years because you're going to do something radical. So I stayed there at the university. The university was the whole town. You couldn't get away from it at a coffee shop or whatever. And then it was like 10 below zero, and we came out to visit my sister who lives out here in Encino, and we met her in Santa Barbara, and it was like 80 degrees out. We're eating outside in a cafeteria, in a little cafe. And I turned to my wife, Pat, and I said, I said, we don't have to stay in Alfred. And she said, sure, sure, sure. You always say that when you go someplace nice. And we got a real estate agent. I think in a couple months, we sold our house immediately to somebody just out of the blue off of Facebook. I said I was leaving, and a lamp worker contacted me, and like on a Friday, like the day after I posted, and by Monday they'd put down cash for the whole thing. And
It was
and
meant to be.
we were off. Our financial advisors said, don't do it. It's way too expensive for you guys out there. You won't make it. And I don't know, we went way out on a limb. In Alfred, we had everything paid for, properties paid for. We had to borrow a huge amount of money to move here. And, it was possibly jeopardizing our future. But myself and my wife, Pat, we've always been risk takers and not afraid to go into the unknown. And so that's what we did. And we haven't missed a beat. It's just this amazing valley. We live in the Ojai Valley. And it is chock full of artists, writers, musicians, Hollywood TV producers, NBA basketball players. It's a really rare place. So we moved here knowing only one person, Susan Aman, who I know you know.
Yeah. Yep.
And I said, well, Susan's there. She probably knows everybody. Let's just go. Okay. Turned out she did know everybody. And she was in the Ojai Studio Artist Organizations, 80 full-time artists who live in the Valley. And that's just a fraction of them. And they let me into the organization and gave me lifetime honorary status, which just kind of meant I didn't have to do anything. And immediately we knew 80 people. And then there's a sign about 3 blocks away here for the California Old Time Fiddlers Association. And I wandered in there, and there was 80 musicians that I got to know immediately. So like within a few weeks, we knew 160 people here. I mean, where else could that happen? So it's really a great supportive community in both music and art and everything else. Playwrights, we have a music festival here, a playwright festival. I mean, it's just the best.
So, Steve, when did you get your Parkinson's diagnosis and how did that change you?
I'm thinking I was diagnosed five or 6 years ago. And then like everybody else with Parkinson's, I had it for sure probably 2 or 3 years before that. I'd been passing out, like out cold when I'd get up out of a chair. And I just thought I was getting up out of the chair too fast, or that happens to everybody. I didn't think anything of it at all. And then a big crew of people for my birthday one year took me out. We're at this great Himalayan restaurant. And I just completely blacked out, face down in the soup, and I wake up and there's ambulance guys, there are paramedics and doctors and all kinds of stuff. And my friend Richard, Susan's husband, he's holding my feet up and says, hang on, Steve, hang on. Everybody thought I died. And then that was followed by a year of testing of my heart, because why else would you pass out? It's your heart. Went through a year of tests, all this crazy stuff. And then I was in the cardiologist's office, all wired up with the EKG stuff. And I sat up and I passed out. And I remember when I came to, again, paramedics everywhere, someone saying he's got no pulse. And they shipped me back into the hospital. And one of the hospital doctors, I said, my heart's fine. They've checked out my heart. What else could it be? And he said, Parkinson's. Because Parkinson's, one of the many gifts it gives is you can't regulate your blood pressure. So my blood pressure can drop 30 or 40 points just from standing up. Mm. So then it all kind of made sense. I went to the neurologist. Any history of Parkinson's in your family? Yeah, my dad had Parkinson's. And then they study you for probably another year and then make a diagnosis. It's like a lot of the neuro diseases, Alzheimer's, dementia, MS, there's no test for them. They just diagnose you by your symptoms. So there's no test they can give you. So they give you all the tests to eliminate all the other stuff. And then they say, by then you're a wreck. And then they say, oh, it looks like you have Parkinson's. And they start giving you the meds. It's a shocking thing to be told you have a terminal incurable disease.
Yeah.
But you only have two choices. One is to suck it up and do the best you can with what you got. And the other one is to sit down and feel sorry for yourself and die. My neurologist and my physical therapist, they say, don't sit down. Keep moving. So that's that. It's affected me a lot. I can't do the things that I used to be able to do. I was in the studio 7 days a week for 50 years probably. And now it's been 4 months since I've been in there. It's dangerous for me in there. I fall, you hit your head. Parkinson's won't kill you directly. Usually it's something else. A lot of time it's falling. So I need to be really careful about that and not do the crazy things I used to. So it's reined me in for sure. But I appreciate life so much more now. I've got grandkids. We have grandkids now, 1 and 3. And just the joy of our lives. I feel like I missed a lot when our kids were growing up. I was at work. I was at work 7 days a week. I had 2 jobs for 22 years, the one at the university and the one as a professional artist, both requiring a lot of attention. And I missed a lot of stuff with my kids, so I get to re-experience it with my grandkids. And really my goals for the future is just to spend time with my family.
Tell us a bit about your musical endeavors and what music has brought to your life.
Oh, well, I listened to music my whole life. I mean, we came up with Janis Joplin and Jim Morrison and, Cream and the rock revolution, the sexual revolution, Woodstock. Boy, those were the days. And I always listened to music, but I had never had time to learn an instrument. And then when I retired at age 56, I tell people that I was dyslexic and I got confused that it was 65, but it's really 56. I decided that now was the time, So I picked up a guitar and learned, and also our son, Zach, at the same time picked up a guitar and started learning. So music is very similar to art making in that, and this, you get in the zone. The world doesn't even matter. I mean, you're not even there. You're someplace else, someplace really special that the music has brought you to. Everybody has that experience. They associate a particular song with an event in their lives, or it's powerful stuff that unites people. Just like art does. Art unites people. Everybody's standing around looking at Matisse paintings, or everybody standing around and listening to Billy Strings tear it up, these days. So music's been great. It's got the same sense of community that Glass does. Like I said, I know 80 musicians in the area. We're all good friends. We played it and sing together. The whole world falls away. So I was able to move through the instruments. I started with guitar, and then I played dobro, and then I played mandolin, which is where I'm at now. I've had a lot of physical challenges because of the hard physical life that I've had. I had like 7 knee surgeries, ACL replacement, a spinal fusion in my lumbar, spinal fusion in my neck, and then Parkinson's. So like you have to start accepting that I can't do this anymore. Ladders are for kids. I'm not going up on the ladder, although I was last week. And that's kind of hard to accept things you can't do. But with that comes some wisdom and priorities that I didn't have when I was younger. Mainly my family and my friends just mean so much to me now. My glass friends.
So, if you could be a member of any band, what would it be?
John Hartford's band.
Oh,
John Hartford people know him because he had a show on TV for a while, banjo and fiddle player. And he wrote all his own music and was kind of quirky and outside of the mainstream. I really associate with that. And I would have loved to play with John. He's passed away now. He passed early, his early 60s, unfortunately. That's the other thing you see is people passing away, and the older you get, the more you see it. And it doesn't make any sense. I mean, the really rotten people who didn't die, we have one
I
in office
know.
now. The really great people that didn't make it. And when you look back on it, it's just some kind of crazy dice roll. It doesn't, I have friends who were athletes their whole lives and they dropped dead. It didn't matter. Other people that's, like George Burns, who smoked cigars and drank martinis till he died. It's random. In fact, my wife had a great idea. We should all come with an expiration stamp on us.
That is a great idea.
When we're gonna go. But since we don't know, you got to live every day like it's your last day on earth. I mean, you really do, and I so appreciate that now. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be here or what I'm going to be doing in the future, but let's face it, nobody does. Nobody knows how long they're going to be here. So you just appreciate what you have and keep moving forward.
What's the best concert you've ever been to?
I would say uh, the Who at the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium. They had the Magic Bus in front, and they were in full swing, destroyed all their instruments at the end. That was amazing for me. I got to see all the greats. I saw Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, all those people, and they're not with us either. I mean, what kind of music would Jimmy or any of those people? What kind of music would they be making now?
Do you have favorite glass artists?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, and probably like most people, they're not really glass artists. They're just artists that work with glass. Olafur Ellison does amazing work. Maya Lin did some amazing glass work. People outside the field that have a fresh take on it. But there's a lot of examples of artists using glass who don't make this stuff. That's something that's kind of unique about us is that we make this stuff. Now, somebody like Jeff Koons, who doesn't make any of this stuff, you can see his studio. He's got 15 or 20 people in there just designing stuff. And when he's asked about it on camera, he said, "Could you put this production together without 15 people?" And the person said no. He says, "Well, that's it." You know, and that's also one of Dale's great contributions. Also, is even though he lost his depth perception with his car accident in '76, I think it was. He just hired the best people he could find. He went to Murano and took Lino and Pino out of there and Dino. Amazing. If you get a chance, and I'm sure you have already, read the Glassmaker, a recent book that came out about the island of Murano since the year 1436. Characters, every 100 years, a character's only aged 5 years. So you're following this one set of characters through hundreds of years, through the plague, through COVID, through tourist trash. It's really fascinating book.
So, Steve, what is your take on the rise and fall of the gallery system?
Whew. Boy, things have changed there. I think the easiest way for me to explain it is through my kids' eyes. They don't want things. They want experiences. And in comes Meow Wolf and the many productions that have spun off of that. One of our kids who was way up in upstate New York near Lake Placid, they were able to buy a place, but our daughter, she doesn't have a chance of buying a place where she wants to live. And she keeps moving. She moved 4 times in 1 year, including Costa Rica. And so they don't want stuff, they want experiences. So that dynamic has changed. And there's a few younger glass collectors that are coming up, but nothing like the volume that we had before and the volume of galleries. There's 100 galleries all over the world just showing glass. And now there's like 4, and the people buying are aging out. The secondary markets there are people that are if they're interested in glass, they buy on the secondary market because they can get it a lot cheaper. And so that whole dynamic has changed completely. But that's one of the things you can count on in life is change, death, and taxes. It's not the same, but it's still out there, and people are still finding their way, working with the material and finding a way to eke by any way they can. I love watching my former students move through the world and be parents now and go on blown away and do develop their business on the internet, thousands of followers. Our daughter Heidi, she was a model, big time, like New York City runway model. And it got to a point in modeling where they would hire you based on your Instagram likes. And somebody just mentioned to me lately that a big school around in Washington might be doing the same thing. And I thought, well, that's just a new generation. This is how they roll.
So if you think about things like AI and all of the stuff you're talking about, will glass art survive? And if so, in what form?
People have been working with glass for thousands of years, actually. The first blowpipe was invented in the year 1 by the Egyptians. It'll continue forever. I think artificial intelligence can only enhance what people are doing. I have no idea where it's going, or I know it needs guardrails. It could be either the best thing or worst thing that ever happened to us. I'd like to take the positive form and dive into it and see what you can find. And if you I'm just gonna pull up my notes here. Yeah, if you look at somebody like Rafik Anadol, who turns digital information into pulsating, alive projections in museums that are like 12 by 12 feet, 20 by 20 feet, just high res. And it's all data. Somehow he turned data into music and verbal information. That's a kind of magic. We in our field, we have people just starting to dabble in it. At various levels. I've always loved to mention my former student Norwood Viviano, who's used Landsat data to create glass castings. John Reese, I know. He did some virtual reality work. It's good for right now, it's good in imagining things. You can type in what you want and it'll build it. But the problem is you can't build it. It is what it is on the screen. If you try and physically build that thing, you can't do it. But it's taking over. Carol Lamont, she just had some digital information put through a robot to carve digital clouds and get that kind of surface. It's out there and percolating. I'm really excited to see what happens.
Thanks for tuning in to Talking Out Your Glass. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation with studio glass pioneer, glasscaster, and educator Stephen Dee Edwards. Many thanks to our sponsors, His Glassworks Incorporated, Bullseye Glass Company, the Art Alliance for Contemporary Glass, East Bay Color, Wet Dog Glass, Resist, Paragon Kilns, and the New York State College of Ceramics at Alfred University. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Until next time, stay glassy.